Okay, we're slowing down a little bit. So again, for those of you that are just joining, my name is Lisa Ireland. I'm at the Student Information Department at OSPI. This is the November CEDARS Statewide meeting. Our focus today is on the Federal Special Education Annual Child Count and Least Restrictive Environment Reporting and CEDARS Submission Errors, also known as the November 1 Child Count and CEDARS Issues. Our main presenter today is Sandy Grummick. I will be transitioning out in a minute to moderate or watch the Q&A in the chat. We prefer that you use the Q&A, but we will be checking the chat periodically. I'm going to turn off my camera in just a moment. I will let Sandy know whether she prefers everything coming through Q&A or people can ask questions. The one thing we would like you to do is somehow we found out mysteriously that some of the folks logging in appear to be coming in as Sandy Grummick. Well, she's an amazing person who could clone herself multiple times to get the amount of work done she needs to get done. If you notice that you are logged in as Sandy Grummick or anyone other than yourself, we would appreciate you renaming yourself just so we know if you ask questions or raise your hand that we know who we're chatting with. And this webinar is being recorded. Once it's been ADA'd, it will be posted online to the OSPI YouTube channel. We will send a notice out when it's done, and we will drop the PowerPoint in the chat at least once during this webinar. And we have one question. Carmen, if you can unmute yourself, go ahead and ask the question. Otherwise, you can drop it into chat, or excuse me, into the Q&A.
Sorry, I don't think I asked anything. I think I was looking to find out what I was currently called, but I was just hidden under another screen. Sorry.
Okay, so Tara, we see you as Tara, and then will the real Sandy Grummick please stand up? So at this point in time, I'm going to turn my camera off, turn this over to Sandy, and thank you all for joining us today.
Thanks, Lisa. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to see a good crowd coming in here today. As Lisa said, my name is Sandy Grummick. I am with the Special Education Division at OSPI. And just welcome, and I am excited to see such a great turnout. I am going to, in the chat, drop a link that is our child count user guide, and that user guide will outline basically much of the information that I am going to share with you all today. And please keep that with you. Share it with your folks who are doing this submission so they have it at the ready if they need to refer to anything as they're working through validating and submitting this year's federal child count. As you can see in the overview, we're just going to do a basic walkthrough of the child count application, how to log in and navigate it. And then a big one is it's easy when all of your records are flowing into the child count application, but what if they're not? So we're going to go through some CEDARS submission errors and the most common ones we find and show how to resolve those. And then also at the end of this webinar, I've listed some contacts and resources. So if bearing anything else, let's jump in and get started. Feel free to, Lisa or Leilani, this is a webinar. Are folks allowed to unmute during the webinar, or do they just have to ask the questions either in the chat or the Q&A?
Sandy, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so people will have to raise their hand if they want to speak, and then I'll have to allow them to talk.
Okay. Yeah, so if you have questions as we're going along, please feel free to raise your hand and we'll take those questions. I think we'll have plenty of time to get through everything today. So just some high points of the child count. What are we looking for when we talk about kids who are included in the special education child count? So there's students who are eligible on the count date, and it's November 1, and they are served by your school district. We ask you to submit your data on or before the deadline. Don't wait until the last day to start working through it, because in a perfect world, yes, all your records that you want are in there in the way that you want them to be seen. But that's not always the case. So please log in and make sure and start working on them as soon as you have time to do that. The due date this year is December 11th. So just keep that in mind. Put a tickler on your calendar. Make sure you have access to EDS. You do need an EDS role to access the special education reporting applications. And if you don't, we talk about that a little bit later on, how to get that role. If you have incorrect or missing elements that result in error records, those records will come up and they'll look pink, and you will not be able to validate those records until a CEDARS submission has resolved those errors. And then after validating and locking your district's data, the person who does that will receive an automatic email or an automated email telling the user that the report has been submitted. In the past, we've sent an additional confirmation about your child count, but we are no longer going to be doing that starting this year, just because of time, and it's kind of redundant. So a little bit more about how the student validation list is populated. So we are only looking for students who are 3 through 21 as of the count date, which is November 1st. Students older, who are 22 or younger, you know, if they're birth through 2, will not be included on this report. This is only students who are served by your school district. So if you send your district or send your a student to another district for special education services, that serving district will be the one to count the student on this report. Check your CEDARS submission exceptions for missing students. Verify that the student was enrolled and being served on November 1st. This is a big one, and we'll go through it a little bit more, is make sure that the student is either reported as a primary school yes in your school enrollment, or that the student is a private school yes or homeschool yes. It has to be one of those 3 elements must be checked as yes. And then check the status of your last successful CEDARS submission. You may have been working in your student information system and thinking that the data has populated into CEDARS, and it just may not be there yet. So just check those, keep those things in mind as a checklist when you're looking for missing students. So how are data populated in this application? If you have students that you noticed that we talked about in the previous slides that had error records or an incorrect LRE code or disability code or any element, in order for that data to populate into the downstream EDS application, that student's record must be unchecked or not validated for that data to flow into it. So just keep that in mind. If you are seeing, hey, this LRE code is still wrong, I corrected it and it's showing it was successfully submitted. If that verification box has been checked, you'll need to go in, uncheck it, save, and wait for that data to to populate the downstream application. Usually it's as simple as saving, logging out and logging back in for that data to repopulate. So just make sure that you give that a check. And there in the user guide, there is step-by-step outline of how to do that. So if you didn't get enough detailed information on this slide, it is in that user guide.
Sandy, we have actually several questions right now, but this might be a
Okay.
good one in this section.
Yes,
The one says, can we validate records, save, and come back and keep working through them?
absolutely. And that is a great strategy that I always recommend. It may even be say so in the user guide. What I often recommend to folks is go in and at the top in the header row of the validation list, there's a checkbox, and that checkbox will validate every record. So go ahead and validate every record and hit save. And then as you work through your list, you can deselect those students who you choose not to count for this year's report. So that's a great strategy that I recommend for districts to do when they're working on this application. But they can absolutely come in and out and save the record. Don't submit the report and have us unlock and relock. But you can save those validated records and come back to them.
Thank you. And I have one other question, and we'll get to it later, but I just want to give a shout out. We still have folks coming in that are appearing as Sandy Grummick, and it looks like there's a couple Lisa Ireland. Please
So it wasn't
rename.
just me.
No. So we have so to rename yourself, go to the meeting list, hover over your name, you click on the 3 dots or the ellipse on the right-hand side of how you're currently showing, and then select rename. If that doesn't work, it's okay. Yeah, that says there may be a few Martys in here too. So, okay. No, thank you. Sorry about that, but we do have questions. I see those, and we'll address those later.
Yeah.
What meeting list they can't see their names as the participants.
Okay.
Well, we'll deal with that later. So, okay. If you can rename yourself, go ahead. We do have more questions, but we'll get to those later. I just, we will worry about that later. Just knowing that you may all come in as Sandy asking all the questions.
Yeah, that's fine too. I ask a lot of questions. I answer a lot of questions. So someone asked about a clarification on when I said that the serving district counts the students. That's the default. If you have a contract or an interlocal agreement that says otherwise, then absolutely follow that agreement. But the default is the serving district reports the students. So I hope that answers that question. Is there anything that I may have? Okay.
There's quite a few questions, but do you want to wait till the end, or do you want to ask them right now?
We can do them now if they.
Okay. So somebody asked, I was told yesterday we get to count the students we pay to attend the DHHP in Puyallup, but I'm guessing that's an NPA.
Well, and that's what I just, was addressing. Right. So again, if you have a contract or an agreement that says that you count the student, then that is okay. What we will do is ensure that only one district counts the student. So absolutely, Kelly, that if that's the way your agreements are working, then go ahead and do that.
That's great. Yeah, thanks, Sandy, because we're getting that question from quite a few districts. So.
Yep. Yep, and it's usually outlined in some kind of agreement, and you will just need to work with that district to make sure. And it's okay to call up and say, hey, who's counting this student for the federal reporting, and this is something since the early 2000s. This child count does not drive your district's funding for federal funds, okay? It's just an account that we use it for a lot of things, but for federal funding, for those allocations for your federal grant, it is not driven by this count. So it's your district total enrollment and a poverty index that we multiply by. So just know that. So I get that question a lot, and it has not been the case for years.
Okay, we also have a question, and it'll be easier if you can all drop your questions in the Q&A. It'll be easier for us to answer and respond to these instead of jumping back and forth. If you can't find the Q&A, that's okay. We do have one that says, and if you've answered this one, because I'm trying to read back and forth, Sandy, if we count the DHH interagency students in the P223H, I'm assuming we can count them on the November child. Was that just responded to in your last comment?
Yeah, again, just because you count them on the P223H doesn't mean you automatically count them on the federal child count. Again, look at your agreements and make those decisions with the other districts from there.
Okay. And there's in the Q&A, we claim only students served in the LEA. But again, there's a question, if we claim the student on P223H, but their homeschool IEP team has determined a placement outside of the LEA. Sometimes we contract with other school districts. So again, that information should be laid out in that service agreement, correct?
It should be, yes.
Okay. And to remove a student, is that one that will need to be edited to remove?
So if you are not counting a student, simply do not check the verification checkbox. That's, it may seem tedious for you to have to check them all, but we require that. And just because they're in your validation list or your verification list it's not an automatic, I get to count this child. There could be reasons why you are not counting that student this year. And I see an example in there, they did not have a valid IEP on November 1, then you would need to not select that checkbox and include that student on your report this year.
Even if they were working on introducing the new one. So since there's a gap period and that wasn't active on the first, they would not be included, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And funny, but we have Barb Wisher on here. And my understanding is that Barb Wisher retired. So I think someone else is signing on her name. If this is the real Barb Wisher, we need your help. So 2 questions. I'm working on the federal child count, came across ethnicity, race, and skyward. Then what is different on the report? From my understanding for CEDARS, let's come right to that. My guess is that information's been updated recently because we don't change the information that comes in from CEDARS, and the November child count or the federal child count application is populated from CEDARS. So I would recommend, and this is for the other person that's saying they believe a student should be populating to that report and not, go into CEDARS. If you're not the CEDARS district administrator, connect with them. In CEDARS, there's a tab called Student. Search for that student. I would recommend selecting the 23-24 school year. It'll be quicker. You click on the record presented for the student, and this is a great view of lots of information about the students. It'll show on the first tab the enrollment, etc. Click on the Attributes and Program tab for determining if that student special education record's being submitted successfully. The Attribute and Program tab would show that. The ethnicity and race data being submitted to CEDARS will be displayed on the first tab in there. So if you have problems, connect with your CEDARS admin. If you are not that person, that student tab will provide you with a host of that information. If you determine that student special education record's not being successfully submitted, it could be the disability code's not coming in for the student. That would be why they're not populating to that application.
Yeah, and we have some screenshot examples of that later on. So that's perfect segue.
Okay, and then we have one more and then we'll get going because Sandy has a lot of good info to share. The student attends a private school, but we serve them for SDI. Should they be appearing on the validation list? Currently, they are not.
So if the student is being served in the private school and comes into your district for services that is on an IEP, not a service plan, but on the IEP, then you can count them. If they are being served through a service plan, you cannot count them. All right, let's continue. Good questions, you guys. All right, so here is just a basic outline of the application. There are 3 main steps of the child count application. There's validation, a review section, and then the certification section, which you'll see a summary of your data that you've validated, and then that's where you submit it to us. So those are the main big chunks of this process. So what does it look like? Well, first of all, like everything, you have to sign in to EDS. And if you don't have an account, there's a way to create an account. And if you need specific access to the special ed reporting, work with your district data security manager or your CEDARS administrator. I'm not quite sure what they're called anymore. The names have changed over the years. So that person in your district can assign those access privileges for you. And then after you log into EDS, you go to your applications and you'll see an application list. This varies for everyone because we all have different duties as part of our job. So your list will likely look different than my list, and my list looks different than Lisa's, but know that it's alphabetical and you're looking for special education reporting. And then from there, we've expanded over the years the number of applications that we have in special education. It used to only be the child count, but now we've got some additional applications. So once you're in special ed reporting, choose the special education child count and LRE reporting link, and that will get you into a welcome screen. And then this just gives you a little bit of information about what we're looking for, the basic things about having a primary school, LRE codes. This is all again in the user guide, which I've dropped the link in again just recently for those folks who may have come in a little bit later. And then navigate to where the work begins. So this is the first tab, the validation page. And this was the header I was referring to just a few minutes ago. If you click this checkbox here, it will validate every student in your list that has a clean record. So and that doesn't have an error record. So an error record would show up as a pink line in the list. Most of them will be green. We have very few error records that come in anymore because the data are just so clean by the time they get through CEDARS validations and get to this step. But this gives,
Oops, sorry, somebody's asking, you said click on this. Where do you click?
You click this checkbox right here. Can you see that? Where it says IEP and current evaluation complete. You click that in the header row, and it will click it in every record you have, and then you can hit save.
So they're asking, how do you get to the page you're actually on? You lost them on that step.
Okay, so you're at this screen here, and you click on the certification tab. And that will bring you to this screen.
Thank you.
This screen has a lot of really good information in it. It tells you how many records are populating in this validation list, if there are any error records, how many records you have already validated, and how many are left that are not validated. And again, you may not want to or need to validate every record. So that is just fine. Once you're satisfied that all your records are in this validation list and their data look good, you can save it and then move on to step 2, the review tab. And what this review tab does is take every record you've validated on this page, and it summarizes it into quite a few different types of reports that we would see in your Excel documents that you can download later. So you'll see your disability by age, and sorry, my Teams is blowing up and it won't mute. You'll see your disability categories by age, the different LRE reports we have by age, as well as every kind of setting, by bilingual, by gender, by race. So you can look at those before you go further and submit the data, and make sure that it's populating correctly. One thing you might notice that is wrong on this page is you will see intellectual disability, a row for that disability category twice. I'm not sure when that happened, but one will be completely zeros. That one's kind of in the middle of the page, and the one that is at the very bottom, that is the one that you should be referring to make sure that your students with intellectual disabilities are rolling up correctly. So just make note of that. We know it's an issue. We're just waiting until we have a little bit more development funds and time to set aside to make that correction. It should not affect your data. It will not affect your data, and it should not affect the way these reports summarize your validated data. Before I go on, I wanted to go back and just say one more thing about the validation page. If you think you might be missing a student, or you want to look for a particular student or a particular set of students, this search feature is really nice. You can search by the student's SSID, their name, or if you want to look for students who are specific learning disabilities, you can search by that, or LRE type. And another thing you can do is these headers here that are underlined, those are actually hyperlinks. So if you click on them, you can sort either ascending or descending order for those particular elements. So that's just some good information to have about navigating through the application. Lisa, do we have questions that you want me to stop and address?
We have quite a few questions, and let me
Okay.
read them, and you can say whether you want to address them now or if they will be addressed as you continue. So the first one says, to confirm, excuse me. I'm getting all choked up by all the questions, sorry. So it says, to confirm, when I've made Skyward changes, which means they made a change in their student information system for a student who's already validated in CEDARS, I unvalidate them by unchecking the box on the certification page. Do I leave them unchecked until after the next CEDARS push and validate them once again when the error is resolved?
Okay, so it's not on the certification page, it's on the validation page. So just so you know, it's on this validation page. And you can leave them checked until you see that data flow into CEDARS successfully, no submission errors. Then come in and unvalidate or uncheck the record, save it, Sometimes you need to log out of the EDS application and log back in and then see that refreshed information come in.
Okay. Thank you. The next one is, I don't know if it's the real Marnie or other people under Marnie. Heflin says they have a student at private school, but they serve him from an IEP, but the student's not showing up on her federal count. How do we add them? And my guess on this one is you have to go into CEDARS and ensure that the student's enrollment and they're being submitted, even if there's no classes, the student's special education record is being submitted to CEDARS and the student is listed as is primary yes. Is that accurate?
Well, he or she would either need to, or they would need to either make sure that primary or private school flag is yes. And they would need to have all of the enrollment information in their district CEDARS submission.
Okay, we had Sandy's asking a bunch of questions.
Yeah, you know.
You have to do
Darn.
1,000 students at a time, I believe, the first time. I don't know what that means.
I believe when that is addressing when I said you can validate here on the validation screen, you're correct. The application will show 1,000 students per screen. So you would have to do, you would validate 1,000 records, hit save, and then it'll bring forward, CEDARS brings, or EDS brings forward the next set of non-validated records. And then you would see those, you could validate those. So yes, for those larger districts who have more than 1,000 students, you will have multiple screens. Thank you for reminding me of that.
Okay, the next question is, we have a student that's enrolled in Gravity. My assumption is that's the Open Doors Youth Re-Engagement Program through Gravity High School. We counted him per the teacher, but he's not pulling on the federal child count. How do I get him on the federal child count? So if you are the resident or sending district to get, and you provided the special education services, and this is my CEDARS lens, is that you will need to change the student temporarily to is primary yes and submit them to CEDARS, because if there is primary no, they will not populate, correct?
Yes, that's 100% correct. We've seen those anomalies with those students who are in some of those re-engagement programs or ESD run programs, that it temporarily just flipped that primary flag for this, to get this activity completed and to get that record into the district's validation list.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So next question from Valerie. It's a non-Sandy or non-Marnie question. It says, but do you click that to validate all? Because some may not be able to be validated because they did not have a valid IEP on November 1st. So if they don't have a valid IEP, they won't be populating, correct?
Well, they could be populating. So all I'm saying is to select for some larger districts or for some staff, the way they attack this activity is they validate everyone and then they deselect the record that they don't want to include. So it's up to you as the submitter, the way you want to work through your validation list. That is just one strategy that's worked really well for some districts in the past. So yeah, there you can validate and then deselect for sure.
Okay. When is the due date again?
December 11th, and it should say it within this application.
Okay. Is there a way to see previous year's data?
Yes, we will talk about that a little bit later.
Awesome.
But
Okay.
it is in the print and download tab. In the print and download tab, you can go and pull your validated list of students from prior years.
Okay, so Sandy's going to show you how to do that, which I think answers Carol's question is, do we have to print all the report components for auditing, or can we access them in the future? And it sounds like you're going to show folks how to do that.
Yeah, we will talk about that. And to answer your question, my best practice for me is to download you don't have to print them, but you can download. I recommend you download your validated list and your summary list, because you never know if CEDARS will go wonky in the future and we could lose that data. That has happened a few years ago. So just, I would say it's there, but will it always be there? I don't know.
Okay. So, and somebody said they have 0 students. I've answered this a couple times in chat. If you believe you should have students populating and you don't see a student or any students, again, if you are not the CEDARS district administrator and don't have access to this information, connect with them. In CEDARS, there's a report under special education you should be able to run to see, but if you have questions on a specific student, using the student tab, looking up the student for the 23-24 school year, clicking on their record and looking at their attribute and program data will indicate if the data is being reported accurately for the student. Once the student is populated successfully to CEDARS, they should populate to your November child count report. Someone says, I'm getting an error message when trying to repull November 1 count to last year. Is that going to be fixed?
I'll have to go in and check it. I didn't know it wasn't working, so.
Okay,
We'll
so
give it
it
a
should
check.
be. Okay.
Yep.
And
Okay, we'll talk about exceptions a little bit later, okay?
yes, we will. Okay. How frequently does the data flow from CEDARS to the special education application?
So Carol, that should flow within 24 hours maximum after you've had a successful load in CEDARS.
So I had a student that had the wrong LRE in the federal count compared to the actual IEP, and I asked to edit that file. Is this correct?
We are asking you to make sure it's correct in your CEDARS submission and not fix it within the EDS application. That is an option, but it's fairly early on in the count, before the deadline. You know, we've got a little bit less than a month before the deadline. So we have been denying those edit requests at this time, hoping you'll get the correct data submitted through your CEDARS application. If that's continues to not come through, let me know and we can let you edit it in there at that time. But just know, if you edit within the application, that does not change your data in CEDARS.
So to paraphrase that, ideally it should all be made in your student information system, resubmitted to CEDARS, so both of those systems show accurate data, and then repopulated to the application. That correcting that in the application is what we would consider a last-ditch effort or last-minute effort if you don't have time to do that, correct?
100%, yes. We really want you to get your data correct in CEDARS because this just child count application isn't the only use of LRE codes. So it really does need to be as correct as possible. And just make sure that that record has been unvalidated and saved so the new information can flow into it.
Perfect, thank you. And one last question, which I could probably answer part of this. It says, did you say the Washington primary schools marked no, that students will not populate to the validation list, which I'm assuming is anywhere in the application? My understanding is that is correct, and we'll have Sandy confirm that or add some information.
Yes, is that the name of the field?
Yeah, is primary, so Washington primary is how it's stored, I believe, in
Okay.
some student information system. So the student has to come to CEDARS district student file B, or excuse me, in school student file C is this school the primary school serving the student.
Great. Christine, so if you make the change in your student information system, it's usually 24 hours after, at most, after a CEDARS submission that we would see the data flow in the downstream application.
And again, that's assuming everything loads correctly to CEDARS. My other thing is, and Sandy's going to talk about submission exceptions, etc. It's really important to work with your CEDARS person, again, if you aren't that person, to ensure that the submissions are loading accurately and the students not being rejected for any reason, but we'll get to that later. So we'll hold those questions for now.
Great.
And I think
Right.
we're good for now.
I'm going to move along a little bit because I just want to be, clear on the time, make sure we have plenty of time. So we reviewed it, we validated our data, we reviewed our data. Now we're going to go to certify our data. So that is step 3 of the process, and you're almost done at this point. You'll come into this page and you might think you're ready to submit, but I just want to make sure there are 2 steps to submitting on this page. You must check this box that says, by checking this box, I certify blah blah blah, and then hit the save button. You have to do those 2 steps. At that point, the submitter, I'm saying you because I'm assuming at this, we'll just talk that you are the submitter at this point. You will receive an automated email confirming that you just submitted the child count data. So just know that happens. And what you're seeing here is a table by resident district, the number of students who were submitted by resident district, and they'll be broken out by the 3 to 5 year olds who are in PK, or the 3 and 4 year olds and the 5 year olds who are in PK, and then the 5 year olds who are in kindergarten through age 21, and then a total count. If you see a number of districts populating this resident district list, don't click and submit your data. Check that to make sure that is what you want. I often get questions after they've hit the submit button going, well, I'm, say, Everett School District, but I see Monroe and North Shore and a bunch of other districts as residents, and they shouldn't be. How do I find out who those students are? So what I would recommend that you do, I don't know if I made a screen for it or not. What I would recommend you do is go back to your validation list and search for those students that you've validated that show school choice as something other than not applicable. And you can do that in 2 ways. You can either do it in the validation list here, or you can go to the download, print and download section here, download the Excel version of the validated student list, and search in column X for those kids where choice is not applicable, and then look in column T for the name of the resident school district, and you can eliminate then or narrow down which of those validated students are showing as residents of another district. Then you would have to go to your student information system and look at what is being reported as a resident district for that student's record. And then if it needs to be corrected, you would have to correct it in a CEDARS, in your SIS, and then in a CEDARS submission. You would need to then also make sure, for that data to flow through, you got to unvalidate that student record. So that happens a lot. So I just wanted to give you a heads up about that, and let you know that don't panic, but it does happen. Any questions about that? So with choice transfer, is that the first one?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So the student after a choice transfer is the student of that new district. So if the student has choiced into your district, you count the student unless they're being served by someone else, but it would be your student. So yeah. You do.
So the next question you may have already answered, and it says, when selecting an organization, only my district is being populated for validation. Do we need to validate for all schools as well, even though it would be redundant? I'm not, do you need more details on that,
Yeah, I'm
Sandy?
not so you when you log in, you are only going to see students or see information for your district, unless you are one of those unique people who have responsibilities in multiple districts. All of the schools within the district should be a part of that.
So if they're seeing students populated that they believe are enrolled in a school outside of their district, they should reach out to your special education email, right?
Well, it's not necessarily incorrect. So say I'm going to use some districts, examples, some of the bigger districts. So say you are, White River sending to Puyallup. You would see White River here in the resident district line item and a number, depending on the number of kids. That may be correct. If you have an interlocal agreement, definitely it could be correct. But I'm just saying, if there are kids that have come in maybe through a choice transfer, and now you should be the resident and serving district, you want to make sure that those data are correct.
And I believe you answered then an example when the certification screen should list students at other resident
Yeah,
districts.
that was it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then if we entered a referral date for B3 birth to 3 students when they were 2, will they still populate? They are now 3 and attending.
So if they're 3 and they're enrolled in your district, they would be included, and they have, valid IEP, valid eval being served, then yes, you would expect to see 3-year-olds. If they're 3 as of November 1 and all those other pieces are in place, then we would expect to see them in the validation list.
Okay, and Giovanna said she's in Mercer Island, and since about a month ago, she's been connected to Skycomish School District in Cedars. She emailed customer support, but has not gotten support about why they're connected to Skycomish. Giovanna, that might be something you need to email Sandy and I about, to see somehow if you've been assigned a role in Skycomish and aren't aware of that. Do you have any information on that at all, Sandy?
Well, or maybe, reach out to Skycomish and see why they may have included you on their list. Yeah, that's interesting.
Okay, and then we got additional information on that first question. It says, when selecting an organization, I can choose to select an elementary school within their district or the district itself. Do I need to fill reports for both of those? So basically, do they need to complete this above levels?
So in the child, when you log into the child count application, you will only be logging in at, the only option is to log in at the district level. In EDS, you may see your schools or buildings, but in the downstream, or in CEDARS, sorry, you might see the different buildings or schools in your district. But when you log into the special ed reporting, that component is only district level information. So you will be coming in as a school district, not as a school. That won't even be an option.
Okay. And then it said, is there a way you can actually show us the report to use to correct the multiple resident districts in the certification? I didn't understand exactly how to solve the issue.
I can't necessarily, I don't think I did. I can't show the actual report. I don't have that set up to do one without student level data, but to answer to where to go to look is you go to your validated list here and download this, and then the column to review, and this will be in the recording, so you'll have it. The column to review is the school choice code column, which is column X. And then search for anything that says that's not equal to not applicable. So filter out those not applicable ones and filter out the ones where your school district is the resident district, and that will show you what's left over of the students, and then you can compare that back to that that table on the certification tab.
Okay. And 2 more questions, and then again, let us know if we're going to see these later. So students come from another district, but the serving district is their district in column X. We're good to go, correct?
Yep, that's right.
So looking good. And then one more says, I have one student with school choice type, public school choice, and resident district name is Ocosta, not Aberdeen. Should Aberdeen not count the student, or do I need to do more research? So it sounds like it's the students choiced in from Ocosta to Aberdeen. And Laura, if you can confirm that. So if they've choiced into Aberdeen and they're serving the student, that's appropriate for them to be seen on their report. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. You might just want to change the resident district to Aberdeen if that's appropriate. It sounds like it might be since it's school choice.
School choice resident district stays where they sleep at night. The serving would be Aberdeen.
Yep. Yeah, and I'm not saying that having other districts here is incorrect. It is absolutely correct. That's why we built it out. I'm just saying it's often throws people off as to why there are districts listed here that they were not expecting to see. And so that is how you investigate on which exact students are populating that table. We good?
That's the last of the questions. I think we're good. We're doing a great
Right.
job. So then how about if we penned our questions until Sandy gets through a few more, and then we'll ask for those questions then.
Perfect. So we have hit check the box and hit save. You've got the automated email. Once this happens, you will see a screen like this, and it says you've successfully certified your child count. So the next step would be to click this link here, which is basically this page, and it'll have a date and time stamp that it's been certified, and we'll want you to print that out, have it signed by the appropriate designee in your district. That's up to your district to decide who signs that, and then mail it in to the name and address on the listed on the page. It's Anya. She checks in all of these for me and does all of that. Since COVID, we have been allowing districts to, oh, did I lose the share?
Still see you.
They said it's cut off.
No, it looks like it's there.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Since COVID, we have been allowing districts to scan this in and email it to us. That is still being allowed until I get called out by the state auditor's office. So if that's something you want to do, that is a-okay. Madison and I will save those and download them and save into a folder, an electronic folder, and have those stored that way. I recommend that you keep a copy for yourself because the SAO's office may ask you for them if they ever come in and do an audit of your special education records. All right, so you're done. Isn't that great? Woo! Okay, so what happens if you're done and then you decide, oh, I forgot a kid, or, oh, I need to remove a kid. We just found out the kid left the district, and we just got the paperwork. So you have the ability to log back in and request an unlock of the application, and then you can go in and go back to that validation list, deselect a student to either not count the student or deselect the student and wait for more information to come in about the child. Or if you have kids that you missed, that the teacher just finally got you the paperwork, and you want to add that student to your validation list, as long as it's before the December 11th cutoff date. If it happens after that, please reach out to the special education data email address, which is included all over the application and in the user guide, special ed data at k12.wat.us. I'm sure Lisa will drop that in the chat. And tell us what happened, and then we will tell you whether to request an unlock or not on that at that time. There is some grace periods time, because after we get all of the state's data in, we will be reviewing the data and making sure there's no duplicates, because it happens. We get about 50 kids a year that we have duplicates for whatever reason. It's totally legitimate. And as we're working with you all to get those resolved, we will allow some flexibility in modifying your data if you need to do that. So we're very open to working with you. It's not anything that's detrimental to anything. So just know that. So you
Okay.
do have an opportunity. Oh, sorry.
Nope, that's okay. I was gonna ask, so you also want, I'm putting my email to Ask SI in there. We have a couple questions on there when you're talking about signatures, and I'll put this, so you want special ed data in there also, right? That email?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Can it be an Adobe certified signature, or does it have to be a wet signature, which
It
I'm
needs to
guessing
be the
means,
wet signature. Yes.
does that mean an actual signature?
Yeah, so the person would sign it and then they'd scan it and send it back to us.
I just have never heard the term wet signature.
Usually as a PDF. Yeah, I have the feds to ask me for wet signatures all the time. So yeah.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
good to know.
Yeah.
So, and I just dropped both the emails in there. Hang on, because somebody put something in the chat, but I'm going through the Q&A first. If you can copy and put it in Q&A, that'd be great. What email address do we use? We already popped it in there, special ed data at k12.wa.us, or for CEDARS assistance, ASKSI at k12.wa.us, also dropped in there. Someone wants to know, is there a way to search for a child in the columns instead of scrolling?
Yeah, you can do a find. Or back on that validation screen, you can, there are some search features in there too, but I've gone in and just done Control F and searched globally, in that list. Now, again, as someone reminded us earlier, if you have more than 1,000 records, you might have to do that for each page. I don't know. I haven't tested it
Okay.
in that manner.
So someone says, if we have you unlock it and make changes, do we recertify and print and mail again?
Yes. Yes, you're going to want to make sure that your certification page, the date on that matches the date and time stamp of the final application. So if we come back and ask you to resolve a duplicate student, you would and you had to be the one to remove that student, we would have you resubmit a certification page to match that removal and the date and time stamp of what's in the captured in the application.
Okay, and one last question here, and then I'll move to the chat. I think we have one there. Again, if you could put them in Q&A instead of chat, it's kind of easier to manage, but we can say, so we have a question. Does that mean the November count doesn't just have to be a student status on November 1st, but if they became compliant between November 1 and December 11, they can be counted.
No, what it means is if you had paperwork that was just not entered into your system yet, but the signatures and everything were on or before November 1, then you could legitimately count the student.
Perfect, thank you. So let's see if, oh, that's funny.
I love
Okay,
that. Yes. You might offend some of your coworkers if you leave a stain on the glass of your copier.
That's funny. Okay. Oh, good. So, Leilani has put in there for if you've not registered for the CEDARS statewide webinars, use the link that's in here. Once upon registering, you'll receive a confirmation email that might mitigate having a bunch of Sandys and Marnies and Lisas in there. Thank you so much for doing that. I do appreciate
Yeah,
that.
I'm
That
sorry
is
if
funny.
I helped make that
I
mistake.
think I did that too. It looks like Marnie or one of the Marnies has their hand raised. I don't know if they have the ability to unmute themselves or if they need to, I can go see. One of the other Sandys asked, do we use IEP meeting date or IEP start date? For example, if the meeting is November 1 and the start date is 11/2, do we include the student?
I would say no, because it's enrolled and receiving services. So that would be my answer.
Okay, so let me see if I can unmute one of the Marnies. I don't know which Marnie it is, and I still want to know, is this really Barb Wisher? Because she's here 4 times. And it would make my heart happy because she's the best. So Marnie, and Liz Zimmerman, I don't know that okay, hang on here. So I have the ability to allow people to talk if I can find them. So we have Marnie. I don't see Marnie Heflin in the, there she is. So the problem is,
There's not one with a hand raised.
there's 3 Marnies, but now we have Liza Zimmerman. Let's go back here and see if I can are you okay if I can unmute this person? Okay, Liza, you should now be able to talk. It says allow to talk. And I don't know which Marnie it is with their hand raised. It's the real Marnie. Oh, okay. So Marnie Heflin, go ahead. You can talk now. Do we have him? I'm unmuting him. Oh, you have to unmute yourself. Or put your question in the Q&A because Marty, I clicked that we should allow you to talk.
It's not the real Marnie, it says, and Lisa said she doesn't have a speaker.
Okay, so we won't, then you'll have to put your answer in Q&A. Rebecca, you can unmute yourself. It's not the real Marnie, so the real Marnie, the non-real Marnie can unmute themselves if they would like to.
This is Rebecca Potts. I accidentally raised my hand, so I lowered it.
Oh, because it's still showing up here. Okay, but that's
it is
fine.
on mine. It says lower. Wait, let me see.
Okay,
well, maybe is it gone now?
It's gone now. Now there's somebody
Okay.
still identified as Marnie that's asking to chat. I've said allow to chat if you want to unmute yourself. But Rebecca, you don't have questions. You just were waving.
That's
okay.
correct.
Okay.
I was waving.
Okay.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. So I don't know if the Marnie, real Marnie, or the fake Marnie wants to talk. They're not doing so. We have Liza didn't have a question. So Juanita, if you want to unmute and ask your question. And Marnie, if either of you can do it, but the one Marnie doesn't look like they have a speaker. And Rebecca, you're still unmuted.
Okay, let's see. Oh, there we go. There it is.
So Juanita, can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
I'm sorry, if you're asking, I don't know if I did anything. I didn't put a hand, I didn't do anything. So unless there's another Juanita.
It could be. Okay, so no, you're up there. Okay, So I'm guessing right now that the hand, they might just be waving and I've tapped that by mistake. So we'll go to the Q&A. And otherwise, Sandy, we can move on if you've got other things to present. So, because when you
Yeah,
get on
so
the, okay,
Mandy had asked a question about, so when you log into CEDARS, so Mandy, you need to, when you log in to EDS, you need to get to the child count application, you need to scroll down to special ed reporting, and I can drop the user guide in the chat that will get you the directions on how to navigate to the EDS application. And if you have problems with that, feel free to reach out to the special ed data email that Lisa dropped in, and we can guide you through that process. No problem. All right, so that was the easy part. Because your kids flowed into the EDS application and they were beautiful and clean and all was right in the world. But what if we're missing kids? How do we even begin to figure out how to get to those kids? So the first thing I recommend is logging back in to EDS and go to CEDARS. If you do not have access to CEDARS, check with your CEDARS administrator to see if they can give you a limited access to view the error records, or sit down with them and work with them through it, because it might not just be a special ed issue. It could be a special ed student is a basic ed student first. And so there could be something in a file outside of the special education file that could be holding up the record from populating into the EDS application. So log into CEDARS and go navigate for this year to the 2024 submission. Give a look of what the submission date was for your district's latest, most recent successful submission, to make sure that that date is after the time that you cleaned up that data in your student information system and pushed it on to CEDARS. So that's just a little bit of information on how to navigate around in CEDARS. And once you do that, this highlighted row, the 2024 row, make sure it's that, click that one, and then scroll down the screen a little bit, and you will see something along this line. And you'll want to go to the submission exceptions. And it gets kind of crazy on my screen anyways, and jumps around. And sometimes I think I've clicked the 2024, and then I find myself in an older version here. And it's crazy. And so just keep an eye out for it is all I'm saying. And it could, maybe it's just me. I don't know.
it's not, you know, it's gonna say, because I'll go in there and I select the 24 year or 23, whatever school year you select. I recommend you kind of just count to 10, because it's like the screen is resetting itself. It kind of bumps up and down just for a second. If you actually watch it, because those of you that are really busy are typing that, doing that, you don't notice it. But I've done that before. I'm like, why am I seeing data from this year? And then it's like,
Yeah.
oh.
Yeah.
So I went back there.
Yeah.
So just take a deep breath, take a sip of coffee, whatever cold beverage you're having late in the day, whatever you're doing there, let the screen just settle itself, and then you'll be able to get to the right
Right.
school.
So I'm glad it's not just me that happens to.
It's
Thank
not
you.
just
Thank you for
you.
supporting me in that. So when you do click on the submission exceptions, this is a screen that you'll see, and I've just highlighted a couple of the more common files that I look at first. So of course, you know, I look at the error records in special education. You might look at the student programs for errors. You might look at district student or even a school student. So all of those could feed into the reason that the data is not populating in the child count application.
And a helpful hint, and thank you for sharing this, and submission exceptions can be very challenging to understand One of the big clues, as Sandy said, your special education data you're submitting for that student either in special education file K or the disability code, which goes to file I, might be great. It may be something what we call a parent file. So in CEDARS, if there's something in the student's district enrollment file or school student file that errors out, regardless of how nice your data is in your SPED file or the disability data is, it won't load. So if you get in there, again, if you are the CEDARS person and you see, parent record has an error, means hopefully that all that data is correct. If you need help understanding or detangling those submission exceptions and you're not the CEDARS person, start with your CEDARS admin. They'll tell you who their contact is, and we are happy to help you untangle those. But again, start internally because they may know exactly what that issue is.
Great. Yes. And so what I do as I'm hunting through these, I will go into the special education record, say, and I'll download, I go to the view, the special education records, errors, sorry, and I'll download those in Excel, which you can do right here. And then I kind of put that off to the side, and then I start researching in other areas depending on what the error message is. So just know that you have the ability and to do that. And I know a lot of you are really savvy at doing this, but it does take some time to get familiar with it. And just know that you cannot edit your data directly in CEDARS. It has to come through a correction in your student information system and then a re-upload to CEDARS. But once you're in CEDARS and you have that list of kids set aside, go and check and see what might be keeping that data or that record out of the special ed file. And you can go and search in the student, if you have access to the individual student data in CEDARS. And what we want to look at, what I look at first to do a lot, is a lot of eliminating. So you can go and you can search for the student. I usually try to search by SSID because it gives me a little bit more flexibility in the search module of CEDARS. And then I look at the enrollment date. Is the enrollment date on or before November 1 of the reporting year? Is the school enrollment record on or before November 1 of the reporting year? Is the primary school? Yes. And work through that and make sure all of those things are aligning up with that reporting date of November 1. That's our magic date. Just looking at my notes, make sure I'm not forgetting anything. The next area that I look at is the Attributes and Programs tab, and make sure the special education record, at least you might have multiple like this example does, but make sure that the date range covers November 1. So in this instance, it does not. So this record would not be in there because there's not a valid special ed record. You also can check to see if the disability category has encompasses that November 1 date as well. So those are some good starting points to do that process of elimination of what's keeping that record out. Boy, I don't know if we have time for this or brain capacity. So, and I mean mine, not any of you. So
Yeah, and we have quite a few records left. Oh, sorry, Leilani.
Oh, that's okay. I just wanted to give a 15-minute reminder.
thank you.
You're
Do you
welcome.
want to do questions first, or do you want to look at this?
Oops, let's see if we can whip through. Yep, sorry, if we can whip through the questions real quick.
Yep.
Says, can you explain what it means if column X on validated students list for your record says student enrollment option state law?
So in that school choice element in CEDARS, there's a list of valid values that you will want to check out that could be applicable for in this case. Lisa might have a little bit more detailed information about the what the valid values mean in that list. But I would
Primarily we
refer to
collect-
that.
Yeah, primarily we collect students enrolled through school choice. Just means that you're reporting to CEDARS. If the student's not enrolled through school choice, it just means somehow one of those flags got flipped and it's submitting. So you'd have to go into your SIS and change that. I think this is a quick yes or no. If a student had a valid IEP at 11-1, but did a revocation on 11-13, do we count them?
Yeah, definitely. They were eligible on November 1st, so they are eligible for this particular report.
Okay, and I do want to throw out here, we've got a few more questions, quite a few more questions. That if we don't get to all of your questions, submit them to us later and we'll answer them. Is there a specific student search feature in CEDARS that could tell us? Okay, no. So Carol, her question is there a specific student search feature that could tell us what the CEDARS file the student has an error in? No, you have to look at the CEDARS exceptions. The only other way too is to go look if you're suspicious, if it's the student special education data, look at the student tab and look at that record. Otherwise, kind of navigating through those CEDARS exceptions to try and tell the story of why the student's not in there. What do I do if my logical delete threshold has been exceeded? So again, Karen, if you are not, or excuse me, Kareem, if you are not the CEDARS admin, you work with the CEDARS admin. If you are the CEDARS admin, you review the files to determine which file has exceeded the logical delete threshold. If you don't know how to navigate that or to determine if you should accept that load, please reach out to me. That's at askfi@k12.wa.us. We'll help you sort through those pieces. It says I have 712 errors. I have 712 errors for the annual IEP interpreter field in K26. Is this one that's still being worked on?
So I would say ask when your most recent submission was. If it was after October 31st, it is not a CEDARS issue that I'm aware of. There may be some exceptions. I know there have been some vendors that have been working some of their logic, and you would need to reach out to your vendor to make sure that the mapping is correct from your SIS to CEDARS for the K26 errors. But on this end, the majority of them that I've seen are corrected. I will go in, Connie, and look at yours to make sure that you are not an exception to that. But otherwise, yeah, check with your vendor to make sure the mapping is corrected, has been corrected. There's been a couple of vendors that have been working on that.
Okay, and Christy says, what if there's no exceptions tab? It means you're one of the lucky ones and your submission went in great. Connie says it was November 15th. I'm not sure what that's in reference to.
It's to the K26. Okay, I will pull that up and let you know what I see in there.
Okay.
Down now.
So the other question is, how can we get a copy of the slideshow I'm recording? I'm working on right now, trying to drop a copy of the slide deck into the chat. If I can slide everything over here and drop it in here. It should go to everyone. It's uploading.
Yeah.
Oh no, it just went to customer support. So hang on, I'll reload this here. Okay. Yeah, and it looks like I dropped it in there. We will do the recording. It will be uploaded once we have a chance to ADA it and load it. So we'll let you know when that is done. Our district still has errors in K26 as well. Okay, read those. It says, I have also read that starting at the top with location and working your way down can be the best way. It can be. So if you have questions or concerns, because if the student data doesn't load, so location file A, it's a hierarchical loading. And I'll just 30-second flyby. Location file A just tells us about your school, so start and end date. That loads 99.9% of the time. Often kids get held up in the district student file or school student file record. Simple errors, probably easy to fix. If the student isn't erring out in either of those files, then they may have an issue with the disability code being submitted for them, which is in file I, student programs. So check there and then go to file K, special education. And again, once you've read through those, if you still aren't seeing the issue, I recommend going to that student tab, looking up the individual student, going to the attribute program tab, and make sure that your system, your SIS system, student information system, is submitting that student with a special education record. Please for Richmond School District as well, have 100% for interpreter column.
Yeah, and there's a thank you for dropping the information in the chat that Skyward and Cumulative are having
Yes.
some issues. I think Power School as well. So.
And somebody says before 12:11, hopefully it'll be done. Okay. Yeah. And so ask about slide. Yeah, because I know we're almost out of time. Sandy, if you want to go through the rest of those really quick, I'll see if I can answer any. And if we don't get to your questions, please reach out to the special ed email or K-12.
Yeah, and so I put in 2 examples, and you guys have the slides. You can check them out later, and we can also talk about them in office hours next week as well. I know there's a lot of frustration around when a student turns 5 and they're in grade level PK, and then they're in grade level K, and then records are airing out. So I tried to give some examples of how to work through resolving those issues. So for example, say your special ed record has a start date of 9/5 to 9/12, and the LRE code is 14. And there was data entered in elements K16 through 24, and the student's 5th birthday was on June 19th of 23. Their corresponding district enrollment record has a start date of 5/5 to present, and their grade level is K. So that is going to make this record error out because LRE code 14 would not be applicable for a 5-year-old in kindergarten. But this record, the second record that was started 9/13 to present with an LRE code of 1 and no COAST data or early childhood outcomes data was submitted, is submitting without error. And that is correct because a 5-year-old in kindergarten can have an LRE code of 1 and should not have early childhood outcomes data. So here is in the green below a proposed solution of how to resolve so that preschool record does not air out. And that would be with your district enrollment record, make sure that PK grade level is ended and corresponds with your dates of the PK special education record, and then the start date of your district enrollment record would be allowable. And did I do that right? Now that I'm looking at it with you guys all here looking at
Don't you love second guessing yourself?
I know. So that's an example. And when we have more time during special ed office hours are every Wednesday from 1 to 1:30. The link is on the special education data website, which I can quickly drop into the chat. Feel free to come in and hang out, ask questions, listen to what other people are going through and how they're solving issues. We'll have a lot more time to talk this through. This is I want to have more time and ask questions of you and get your feedback, but it is in the PDF that Lisa dropped in, and we can discuss it more at any time. There are also in this slide deck I didn't talk about records loaded because it is not currently functioning. So we can talk about that later when the developers get it reactivated
Yeah,
on
we'll
how
send
to
a notice
look.
to the field. Yeah, we'll send a
Yeah.
notice, Sandy, when it's
But
activated.
just know that the information on how to do that is in here for you, for a resource, and then just additional resources and how to connect with any of us. Sorry this got quick at the end, but I wanted you guys to be able to ask questions throughout the time we had together today. I didn't think we'd fill it, but we sure as heck did, didn't we?
We did, but you know, they had such diverse questions. You did a great job walking us through those. As always, Sandy, I appreciate working with you and appreciate your expertise from you and your team. And I could advocate. I have sat in on the Zoom hour or the Zoom time that Sandy has, and it can be a very valuable resource. And as always, we also hear about districts support each other in there. So I would encourage you to participate in that if you can.
Yeah, we also have some vendors who drop in too, and they are very helpful as well. So it's good. And it goes fast. There's no registration required. You can come and go as you please. So there was, oh, I thought we had a raised hand, but we
We've
may
had,
have-
I think they're just waving at you, Sandy. I think throughout the day, people are just waving at you. Leilani, thank you so much for your support
Yeah.
today. We can't do this without you. Bassett was here. We appreciate all of you and your hard work. We have one more Q&A before we get logged off here. Oh, thank you from the real Marnie.
Yeah. Hey, there's a lot of duplications of people. I would love to have myself duplicated.
Right? We want to clone you. Lots of thumbs up, hearts, clapping. Sandy, as always, you do an amazing job.
Yeah,
Thank you
you
so
too,
much.
Lisa. Thanks for jumping in and helping out. I value you a lot.
Thanks. Thanks, everybody. We appreciate you. And as we mentioned, and that Leilani popped in the chat also, it takes us a little bit of time because we have to go through an ADA, the recording, and when it's done, we'll pop it up on there and we'll get that information out to all of you. So thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day and happy Thanksgiving if I don't talk to you before then.
All right. Thank you so much. And can we stop the recording?